Hello, everybody. We're back with a new episode of Translating Love with me, Woifi.
And me, Dani.
Yeah. We're back in this new year, and I have to say, it's an interesting already. Oh, man, so much shit already happened.
But let's not talk about it.
But, yeah.
We hear enough about that shit.
But I think it's going to be a good year overall. Because otherwise, if you would think that it's not going to be a good year, why would you even start it, right?
That's a weird implication.
Like skipping it. Skipping the year.
Skipping the year.
Yeah. But I think it's going to be a good year overall. I have still a good feeling about the year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if I do or not.
I do. I do. We really appreciate the I don't know, the feedback on the last couple of episodes. I think they have been really good, and we also obviously look in our statistics and see where people are listening from, and we see people from England, France, Brazil. That's super cool. Like Asia.
Yeah.
Like I think we are almost in almost every country now.
That's kind of cool.
Not almost every, but like in a lot of countries far away, and that's kind of exciting. And we love to hear from you. So if you have like feedback or just want to say hi or you have a question or whatever, you can just hit us up either on our website or on Instagram, and you find those in our description of the podcast.
Indeed.
So in this day today, we have a new topic with us, and it's an interesting topic, I think.
It is indeed a new and interesting topic.
It's weirdly, we wanted to do this topic from the beginning, and we thought a long time about it because it's not an easy topic to do, or at least we thought it might be difficult to come up with examples or stuff to talk about, but I think it's not really necessary to have like a handful of examples.
Especially because not everybody who's listening is in the same language barrier that we are.
Right.
So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to come up with specific examples of English, German stuff when not everybody's
and that's
in
the topic
English and
already.
German.
That's the topic. You already said it, and you just spoiled everyone.
Because it's not like it's in the title.
Oh, it's in the title. That's true. So, language barrier, and you probably picked this episode specifically because you may be in a situation where you have difficulties with being either in a relationship with someone or like friends with someone or whatever, or you have like coworkers and there are obvious language barriers. And it's an interesting topic because, I don't know, growing up, obviously being surrounded with people who mostly speak your language, you never think about, okay, I might be in a relationship with someone at some point that doesn't speak my language, or the people you do encounter who speak a different language, you don't typically it's not the case that you're like, oh, I'm going to see them more often, or we're going to hang out, or it's just like you happen to randomly meet somebody who speaks a different language. Either be in another country or they visit you or whatever. So it's most of the time a not super permanent situation. But if you choose to be with someone who is from a different country, and we did just a couple of weeks ago an episode on like living in a country where you don't speak the language, which it's also a super interesting episode. There are a lot of things that come up pretty fast that you didn't think about going into that relationship. And for me, one of the and it's still sometimes coming up, it's getting less so, but one of the biggest thing at the beginning was just how different just wording, sounds, and also phrasing of translations that I would translate one-to-one in my head to English, from German to English, sound or mean in English. So you might say something completely, I don't know, normal in German, but it might sound completely off in English, or you wouldn't phrase it like that. I would say it in the sense that, because this is most of the time the case when that happened, is that you would say something in English
that you translated just directly from German to English. And it often came off very harsh and very like, I don't know, like forceful almost.
I mean, it's also the nature of
reality,
Germany.
Yeah, but in reality, that's how you would just say something honestly in German.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes your form of just saying something honestly when you say it in English comes off critical or comes off as like super harsh and blunt.
Yeah.
When it in English, we wouldn't necessarily make it so blunt.
I'm also super blunt, I have to say. I'm usually a very direct person.
Not always, though. But it depends on how well you know the person.
Sure.
Because with people you don't know as well or that you haven't spoken to in a while,
you're crawl in their ass. Yeah, that's true.
No, you're typically more like you withhold, I think, a lot, and you
rim
just...
jobbing. Yeah. No, I know what you mean.
You're not rim jobbing strangers and other people. That would be
no, but I know what you mean. I mean that's true. If I know someone, I'm sometimes a little too honest. Or
with the people that you're close with, yes.
Right, and it might come across as a little like
I think
mean.
I mean, what we've talked about before is Wolfgang has a certain tone to his voice when he's talking, and sometimes he sounds kind of angry even when he's just talking. Like
that's not true.
No, but more when he's telling you something, like when he's making an observation about something you're doing, sometimes his tone seems angry or like he wants to fight with you. That
reminds me totally of Dwight from The Office.
Yeah, totally. But so it's kind of like you're not really sure how to react to that because my typical reaction is to get defensive because that's just where you go when somebody comes off as kind of aggressive. And I don't think that's what your intention is.
But that's, yeah.
But the weird thing is you do it in German too. That's not a language barrier thing. That's just you have a certain tone sometimes.
No, that's true. Sure, obviously. But also I think German is a very... I mean, I like there are a lot of videos online on YouTube and whatever where they make fun of the German... Right, they would make fun of the German language. For example, butterfly is like this nice sounding thing.
And they go through like every language with the word butterfly and it's all like, they all sound really nice. And
in German it's Schmetterling. But it depends how you say it, but sure.
It depends how you say it, yeah.
You can also say it Schmetterling. But
and you can also scream butterfly.
Right, right. So, but still, German is a little harsher, I would say, in terms of how it sounds. And that also is... You don't think about that.
Honestly, I think that is not necessarily true. I think it's slightly harsher as a language, but I think it's like as someone who comes from an English-speaking language or country, what the German that we hear there is typically in movies or in shows or something, and that's always over the top. And
obviously,
people have this idea of what German is, but when I came here, I was like, it's not like that at all.
No,
it's actually I think it's a beautiful language.
But not, yeah, sure, but that's not what I mean in terms of sound. I mean more of the how you know the English language is more in the front of the mouth, and the German language is more in the back.
I would say it's more on the sides.
Or side, yeah.
It's
I don't know. I'm
round.
not. I might be wrong. I might be wrong, but still, and also the words and the letters you'll use a lot in the German language, you typically don't use as often in the English language, and that alone makes
the sounds together. So like, there's a ZW sound that we don't have, like Zwetschge.
Yeah. Yes.
That's not a word. We don't have like a ZW or 12.
Right. And that alone, I think that alone makes it sound differently. And when you are with someone who are, you're with someone in a relationship and you're like open and you're vulnerable and you, I don't know, express your feelings and stuff like that. So if you encounter talking to them in a real honest level, especially at the beginning of a relationship, it can sometimes come off that the other person sounds not as nice or weird to you, even though they might be like on the same level or try to express the same things, but it might sound off to you. And I think that was a big thing because we had a lot of fights based on exactly those things where I said something translated directly from German to English, which came across completely different as what you know.
But honestly, even I think it's important to also say that even once I started to learn German and I understood more, it came to a point where if we would argue or something, you would argue in German and I would argue in English, because then we could each argue in our own language, which makes it more comfortable.
Yeah.
And we understood each other then. But even then, there are just certain phrases in German that sound harsh, and they're blunt, they're straightforward, straight to the point, which is a very German thing. But even when you're not translating it, it would sometimes come off wrong because I'm still translating it in my head. So what you're saying, I'm still translating one-to-one to English in my head. And I think the key is to be able to you have to take an interest in your partner's culture, essentially, where you learn a little bit about it. You have to be more open to those things and be able to make those connections in your head. Okay, learn that when he says this, it doesn't necessarily mean this. Or when they say, I don't know, whatever
it's
they
weird.
say.
It's weird because fighting in multilingual relationship brings the whole thing to another level, because afterwards you have to dissect, okay, was the fight about a misunderstanding or like a complete like out of context thing, or was it really about something I don't know, something that is important to your partner. And most of our fights in the beginning of the relationship were
they were misunderstandings,
exactly that, where we had to learn to better communicate with each other, to understand each other better, and to learn that if that person says something like that or that specifically, you can't just take it as it is, but you have to put it into the English or German context of the whole thing.
Well, you also have to put it into, I mean, we all are different people, and so even when you speak the same language, you have to
different people.
Even when you speak the same language, you have to learn your partner's way of speaking.
Yep.
Because everybody expresses themselves differently. So you have to do that as well. So it's not just the language thing, but it's also you have to learn how your partner speaks. You have to learn, okay, when they say things like this, they're just a blunt person and they don't mean it in a mean way. Or when they say this, they're not saying something against you, or you have to learn those things about your partner.
Yeah, I agree. But it's interesting because the whole concept of, or the whole idea of being with someone is you're open, you get to know each other, and you don't have to ever think about, okay, how can we like communicate better with each other, in the sense that we don't understand everything the other person says. But when you're with someone who doesn't speak your language, that becomes a difficult what is the word? Obstacle, right? And I think a big thing about, we always praise that communication is a big thing.
Yep.
Especially if you're really like a beginner in the other language. And that's for both sides, because either the person is moving to that place or the other person is moving to the other place. And it might be that none of the both parties can speak the other language super well, or one can, the other can't. So you both have to put in a lot of work to be understanding, but also understand the other person. That's the same thing, right? Yeah, but to be understanding in the whole thing, that even though you might understand the language and you can speak it well, there might still be some things that you're just not aware of because of the culture, because of the background, because of phrasing, of stupid little, I don't know, sayings that are pretty common.
I mean, let me tell you, in German, there are like 5 million weird little sayings that
it's the same in English.
Yeah, but I find in German they make less sense. Like, du hast ein Vogel.
Yeah, right.
You have a bird.
But that
means
what
like
is
you're
I'm dying
crazy,
to
like
see
there's
you.
something in your head.
I'm dying to see you. For example.
But that still makes more sense than you have a bird.
See, I don't think so. But that's exactly what I mean. You heard that phrase.
But what would you say? I mean, dying to see you. You could easily change that to, I can't wait to see you, or I'm so excited to see you. Almost the whole thing stays the same.
But you can say the same thing.
You have a bird.
You can say, "Du bist ein Idiot."
You're an idiot.
Yeah.
But du hast ein Vogel is you have a bird. You have a bird.
Yeah.
So when you say something like, what was the example you gave?
Dachschaden. You can say Dachschaden. Du hast einen Dachschaden.
If you say you're an idiot, to me that's not at all the same because one is something obviously. You have and one is something you are.
Yeah, sure. But you can say du hast einen Dachschaden.
Yeah.
Yeah, which means you have a loose roof. A leaky roof. Yeah, leaky roof, that will work. But I mean, I think you as a listener, and please tell us if it's not the case, but you think you understand what we are trying to say here, is that the man is always right and the woman, that's not what we're trying to say.
What I would say is that I think another issue with the whole language barrier thing on my side of it, so as the person coming to the country with a different language, we talked about this in another episode too briefly, but being able to express your own personality is extremely hard. And I think that's not only hard for yourself because you're so used to being who you are. And if you can't express that in another language, that's really difficult. It's difficult to get to know family, to get to know friends if they also don't speak your language. I was lucky enough that most of your friends spoke English, so I was able to communicate with them still and be myself for the most part. But you still, when I speak my language, I have to slow it down. I have to choose my words wisely because I can't necessarily use all the words that I would normally use. But I also think with your partner, in the beginning of a relationship, you're getting to know each other still. And that's also kind of hard because I had to do the same thing with you where your English was already really good when we started.
Oh, thank you.
But I still had to choose my words wisely. I still had to change my own language a little bit, even though I was speaking English still. I had to change how I spoke English so that you would understand. And I think that also made me hold back from a lot of my own personality traits that sometimes I still think, I don't really do that anymore when I used to do that before I came here. Like things I used to do that I don't do anymore.
Like?
I don't know. I used to do like crazy like dancing around for no reason or...
But what does that to do with being...
Because you lose some of your personality is my point. I feel like you lose a lot of your personality because you feel like more of the silly stuff that I would do. I think I lost a lot of that because...
I think I got it now.
You have so much of it. But I think you lose a part of yourself and you don't have confidence in yourself when you're having to speak another language. And being silly, that aspect of my personality was all confidence because I didn't give a shit, you know, and I would be silly anywhere. But when I came here, I lost a lot of confidence because I'm trying to speak this language or understand it. And so I think you lose little bits of yourself sometimes.
Let's take a quick break. And we're back. And that it's true. I mean, if you go to another country or if you try to be with someone and express yourself and be yourself in a different language, that's hard. And I think a big thing is when you fall in love with someone that might not speak your language. And, you know, at some point it might be that you communicate on a very basic level because maybe you're in a different country for like a vacation or like for a semester of university or whatever it is. And you just meet that person and you try to communicate on this, maybe in English, and maybe English is not your and their.
Yeah, there are some examples of people who they like maybe one person speaks French and another person speaks German and they come together and the easiest thing is to speak English. Because they both have a slight understanding.
That alone gives you a huge, I wouldn't say problem, but that's a huge thing to do, to accomplish, I mean, falling in love is easy in a sense that if you meet someone and it just clicks, even though it might be a fling or like just for a few like weeks for holiday or whatever, it's fairly easy. But staying in love and trying to build a relationship out of that with trying to communicate on maybe a language that is not yours in the first place, like English or whatever, whatever it might be. I think that's hard. That's super hard. And it's a big accomplishment if you can do that. And I think a big thing in that sense is just to be, I don't know, a little, what is the word I'm thinking of?
Patient?
Patient, thank you. Yes, because, I mean, communicating on a different language is already hard. If you speak 2 languages, that's something not a lot of people do. And then you communicate on like an emotional level, on a really personal level. That alone is hard because we usually don't learn it in school.
I always call like how we learned German, for instance, in school, I always called it travel German.
Right.
Because that's basically what it was. It was, here's some basic phrases that you learn to be able to get around.
Right,
ask for directions, ask for food, whatever it might be.
Exactly.
But you don't learn how to have a real conversation with somebody and how to express your emotions.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something, I mean, I would love to see that more in schools, that they try to teach that and not just the travel aspect of the language.
I mean, in general, it's I think nowadays it's super, I think it's becoming more so because with Netflix and everything being available and you can just switch the language so easily. And YouTube being so much bigger and social media, I think more people are into English than when we were young. But even further than English, English is like a necessity nowadays. I think it's something you should speak at least to a certain extent, especially when you're traveling. And with so many people traveling all the time, you encounter people and they ask you something in English, and it's just super cool if you can provide a simple answer to those people. But I think, yeah, exactly. When you communicate on a like deeper level with someone that you like or love or whatever, that's another level. And I think it's super hard to meet each other and to be yourself, but at the same time try to show the other person that who you are really in that sense. And I think that, I remember multiple occasions where you told me it's super hard for you to be yourself around my family, my friends, because you can't express yourself the way. I don't have the
language to express that. And I still don't in full. German, I'm still not who I would be in English around his family. I mean, certain family. Some family, it's fine because it's just different. I can speak English a little bit, or I just know them better. But I feel like for your family, I come off as like a more shy person when I'm not that. Yeah. And I hate that.
I think that's super common though. From what I have known, the people dated people from another country, that person always came off a little like introverted, shy, but that's just the nature of, okay, I'm being there in a different country. I'm not able to speak.
For me, it's not just, it's not also, it's not only about, I can't speak the way I want to speak, but it's also when I'm in certain situations where there's a group of people, it takes a lot more brain power to listen to the entire conversation when multiple people are talking.
And then you have to interject. That's super hard.
Exactly. And so to do both is really difficult. It's a lot better for me now, where I notice now that I'm not really translating in my head anymore, which is really cool. It's just I automatically understand. Yeah. When at first it literally was like as if I'm typing it into a translator in my head. Yeah. Where it's like it would take a solid minute or so before I really... It's like somebody would say something, and by the time I translated in my head, the topic changed, or 2 other people had already spoken and I missed it.
She was like 10 minutes after we changed the topic, so I was like, I have an idea to that topic. And I'm like, God damn it.
Yeah.
But we are smart, and so are you. And we found some little things you can maybe do to improve exactly that, or that might help you with just the situation you're in. Maybe you know someone, or maybe you are in a relationship with someone who doesn't speak your language. And by the way, if you're in a relationship with a German person and you're in Austria, then that does count as well, technically.
I mean, Austrian dialect is very different.
It's also different languages, and how they express how you express how to express yourself in German or in Austrian German. I think there's some different things.
I mean, that was actually nice that you messed up, because we have a perfect example there. And one of the examples is laughing.
Right.
And the thing is, it's going not just about misunderstandings. What we have here written is about more laughing about misunderstandings, because you might say a word that's completely different and it means something totally different, but you should be able to laugh about it. And
I mean, you had those things multiple times.
Yeah, I know, but that's what I'm saying. I used to get so upset, like if I said the wrong word. If you would make fun of me, that would be for me like a really big, we would have fought about that, because I would have been like, don't make fun of me, I'm trying, you know? But I think it's good to laugh about it, because you're not going to get it perfect. And exactly things like that. If one of us messes up a word, we always make fun of each other. And it's in a playful way, so it's not in a mean way.
Yeah.
But it's a way to just, it makes it normal, you know? It happens, you laugh about it, and you move on.
I agree. I mean, we already said that communication is key. And sure, the best thing would be to learn the other person's language. So you can not only talk in their language, but also in yours with each other. Because then at some point you might be able to converse in exactly, you know, that the one person is conversing in their language and the other person is conversing in their language.
And that's basically what we do.
Right. Or mixing it up, and it's much easier to communicate because you have like basically double the amount of tools or words to express yourself, and it's much easier to do so, at least from what I found, because sometimes I say things in English because they might come across easier, I might be able to express them easier. But then at the same time, I think of something, I can say that in German better. And there's no problem. There's no barrier anymore.
I think it's also important to be flexible and understanding.
Yeah.
And for me, this is a big one. I think that especially for the partner, so the partner on your side, for example.
Yeah.
So the one where you're in your country with your language.
Yeah.
You have to be really, really patient with the person learning, because depending on how old you are, it's hard to learn a new language as an adult. And if you've had no previous experience with it, it's even harder. And it doesn't matter what the language is. It's hard to learn a new language. And so you have to really be patient with that person and try not to get frustrated with them when they don't understand you.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that it's all on you, but that's the part of it that you have to take on.
Yeah.
To learn how to be patient, to learn how to be understanding and flexible with, okay, they don't understand yet, I need to try harder to speak their language. Yeah. Or I need to try harder to use simpler words to help them if I really have to say something in my language, that it's simpler. And if they don't understand, even if we're in the middle of a fight, I need to be able to explain it to them if they don't understand.
I mean, that goes along with being curious, because when you...
Then that would be for the other side of it then, for the other partner.
Exactly. When you are with someone that comes from a different country, culture, and speaks a different language, it's much easier to adapt to the whole situation when you're curious, when you're interested in their culture and their language, because it makes it easier to learn. And even in their
like family traditions, because
stuff
those
like that.
Are different.
Right.
I mean, the wedding traditions alone were so different for me. When we got married here, there were so many wedding traditions that were so new to me. Some of them I didn't love, but I did them anyways. What didn't
you like?
Well, I ended up liking it. That's the thing. The idea I didn't like, and then I ended up loving it. But here it's very common when you get married, you take wedding photos beforehand, basically before the actual wedding.
I mean, some people do it like this, some people do it after.
But it's more traditional that way, is what people told me. No, that's what people told me, because you have all of those traditions that you do before, and like the games and stuff that you play together.
Yeah, but like the actual wedding pictures, my dad always takes them afterwards.
Yeah, but okay, then I don't mean the wedding pictures, but I just mean there are things that you do before the ceremony together as a couple and as a family, where the groom, for in our example, sees the bride before the ceremony. And in the US, that's something that not many people do. Sometimes people do the first look, is what we call it. But typically the first time, or like in the stereotypical American wedding, you see the bride the first time when she's coming down the aisle. And I always loved that, because it's like you have this first view of, your future wife, in our case.
But see, I like the idea of seeing her before that, because then, or him.
I mean, it brings a little of the stress down, actually.
That, and also there is an easier way out because. No, hear me out. Come on, hear me out.
Because if she looks really horrible, then you can just be like, look, "Oh, we're not married yet." So.
You're standing there in front of all your friends, family, people you like, people who love you love, and who are in your life, and he's walking down the aisle, or they, and that's so much pressure, and flunking out of that situation is like the worst you can do. And doing it before that, when nobody sees you, is easier. It's just easier.
Uh-huh. But I do say I ended up loving. I actually didn't know that until the day of our wedding. And it was the day of our wedding that somebody told me we have to do these things first. And I was like, but then he's going to see me. And for me, it just didn't click. I'm like, that's
it's weird.
Stupid.
We never talked about that. We never thought about. We never. I mean, we also didn't have that much time, but we never thought about. How is the tradition here, or what we do? For me, it's just normal.
Yeah.
So you weren't that curious, Danielle?
No, I was curious because people told me about the other traditions. I knew them, but that one just never came up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I ended up loving it. I thought that was really sweet, actually.
I mean, I think one of the biggest part is just having fun with each other. Because in the end, you're in a relationship, you want to be happy. We also did a super interesting episode on being happy in a relationship. And I don't know, there are so many obstacles and so many difficulties in like being in a relationship with a partner who doesn't speak your language or who is learning your language, that it's most of the time just the better choice to just laugh about it, to just have fun together, explore exactly that. And I think what also is super cool is, I mean, you're in a relationship with someone that doesn't speak your language, and you might have moved somewhere, or the other way, they moved to you. And that alone shows so much dedication and commitment for the relationship, which you should remind yourself of.
Yeah, I think it's important not to take that for granted, because
I think so.
When you get in these fights,
you should totally take it for granted.
When you get in fights with each other, a lot of times it's easy to, at least I think in the beginning, or if it's a really big fight, you can get so upset with the other person where you forget, okay, like sometimes you think like, oh, this person must not love me as much as they say they do if they're talking to me like this, or this kind of fights happens, those thoughts that come into our heads. But I think it's important to remember the sacrifice that you made, the sacrifice that your partner made in order to make the relationship happen, because in the long distance situations, or like our situation where one of us moved to another country, clearly that person wants to be there. Otherwise they wouldn't have done that. Like that's a really big thing to do for something they don't care about. So I think it's important to remember that they do care about it, and it's just a fight, and it's better to just try to resolve it, figure out the misunderstandings that were there. Yeah. And one last thing I want to say is that it's also important, this goes along with communication, I think, but if there's some sort of misunderstanding, say your partner says something to you and your immediate reaction is to, or immediate thought is to get mad at that, you want to react in an angry way because it upset you, then
you're right. No?
I think the best thing to do is to either take a second to think about it, what could they have really meant by that, or just ask them. Because even if you're in the middle of a fight, I think it's okay to get clarification and say, what did you mean by that? Because it came off wrong to me, or it came off this way to me. Is that how you meant it? Yeah. Because that could potentially reduce the risk of the fight blowing up into something it doesn't need to be by adding another misunderstanding on top of it. Yeah. So I think it's important to communicate those things with each other before you react to them.
Yep. And don't hold grudges.
Don't hold grudges, but I think that's true for any relationship.
Yeah. Unless you're with a witch, then I would hold crutches. Or with a disabled person, because they can't maybe walk without crutches.
Crutches.
Yeah, that's what I said.
And grudges.
Oh, it's also different things. See? Another language barrier things, guys.
And we come full circle.
But no, that's it.
That's it.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
And if you like the episode or other episodes, please share them. Please subscribe to us on anywhere that you listen to podcasts,
Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Stitcher, whatever. Anchor.
And again, you can always leave us a voice message on anchor.com. Anchor.fm/translating-love. You can leave us a voice message there and we can feature it on an episode.
Right.
So please do that. Ask us a question. Just leave us a little, review or remark or whatever you want to say. And you might be featured on the podcast.
Yeah. Other than that, we hear each other next week.
You hear us next week.
Yeah. I mean, we pretend to hear you. What did you say? Thank you. Have a nice day too, sir.
Oh, you think our podcast is the best podcast in the world? It's so nice. There's a lot of podcasts out there.
Wait, what?
That's really nice.
I should talk more? Yeah, it's true. I really should talk more.
Wait, what? Oh, you want an episode or two with just me and he needs to leave. Okay. Yeah,
no.
He's the co-host anyways. So
You are the co-host. No, you're the co-host.
Who's the co-host? You?
No.
Are you host and co-host and I'm co-host?
No, you're co-host and the
co-host
air.
sounds like a dessert.
Co-host. That's true. It's done.
Okay. Bye. Bye. Goodbye.
Goodbye.